Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Show on the Grizzly True Sports Network. I am your host for the NFL Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host from the FF Face-Off, the real NFL guru, Anthony Cervino. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing awesome, Mike. How are you?
I didn't expect to have a show Friday since the Cowboys lost. It seems like you missed the days after the Cowboys lose.
I mean, they lose an awful lot, and I'm usually here.
Yeah, you're right. They do lose an awful lot. The funniest thing was the text I got after they went up 7-0, and you told me they wouldn't lose the next decade.
Yeah, come on, that was a joke.
I know, but it's a joke me bringing it up now too. It's also a joke the way the Cowboys played against the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen looks like, and this is not just a Thanksgiving Day game thing. He looks like he has improved a lot over the last month or so.
But yeah, he's playing his best football possibly of his career in the past, 4 or 5 games. And he really did show up on Thanksgiving Day. On the Cowboys end, they finally started fast. They got into the end zone really quick, and then they collapsed after that. Meanwhile, on the other end, Josh Allen, he hit Cole Beasley for a touchdown in a revenge game. John Brown didn't go off, but he had a pretty solid game. But Devin Singletary, he was the key piece. He really needed to show up for Buffalo, and he really has been since coming back from his injury because, as Frank Gore's a Hall of Famer, but he really couldn't hold down that backfield. And ever since Singletary has come back, he's shaken off the rust, and he's probably one of the best rookie backs in the game. Or next to Josh Jacobs, he's the best rookie back in the NFL.
Yeah, when you look at the Bills, I think they got the Ravens coming up next. If they were to beat the Baltimore Ravens, I think it's safe to say definitely they're a Super Bowl contender. But from what we saw of the New England Patriots last night, the Bills could win this division.
I mean, the Patriots don't look good. I'm sure we're going to talk about them later. But Buffalo's pushing them. They're going to play each other again. The Patriots, I think they have a pretty tough game against the Chiefs coming up. So if they drop that, they will be playing Buffalo for the division, and I believe the Buffalo Bills will win that game.
I think they can win that game. We'll talk about the Patriots in a little bit, but back to the Cowboys. The defense is what's concerning to me here because I thought the defense was going to be the strength of this team, but they have a hard time tackling, basically, Anthony.
Yeah, and I don't want to put it all on the fact that Leighton Vander Esch, hasn't played and he's been out because their defense has barely showed up all season long. They've showed up against the bad teams, but there's something off with this team. If the offense isn't clicking, the defense is. If the defense isn't clicking, the offense is. And it's always going to come under Jason Garrett.
Yeah, and I think that is why this team never clicks completely, is Jason Garrett. Agree or disagree? Because
to
me, it's the only thing they're missing is they've got a roster that should be good enough to run away with this division. I don't think it's a roster good enough to win the Super Bowl, but it's a roster good enough to get to a divisional playoff game or maybe even a championship game with proper coaching.
I mean, no, that is a Super Bowl caliber roster.
It's not.
From top to bottom, it's
not.
Well,
you don't
think so?
I don't think the wide receiver is a Super Bowl caliber. I don't think the quarterback is a Super Bowl caliber. And by Super Bowl caliber, it doesn't mean that he couldn't someday win a Super Bowl. But I don't think he's the kind of quarterback that can will his team to win. I think there's only like 4 or 5 guys in the entire NFL like that. So I still think Dak's top 10. But Dak's not a guy. Put it like this. If you throw Russell Wilson in this situation, you're probably going to win the game. More often than not with the talent around them. I just think for Dak to win a Super Bowl, he needs superior talent all over the place. I don't think the DBs are as good as you think they are, and I don't think the wide receivers are that great.
Well, I think you're wrong on the wide receivers. I'll give you the defensive backs. I do think they need help, more so at safety than anything else. But their wide receivers with Cooper, Gallup, and Randall Cobb, they have one of the best top 3 receivers in the league. They have questionable depth if any of those guys go down, but that trio is one of the better in the NFL.
Yeah, you got an old Jason Witten. I think Randall Cobb is probably past his prime. Gallup's a good receiver. Cooper's a good receiver. I just don't see a number one guy there that can dominate a game. And we saw that with Amari Cooper because dominant wide receivers don't get held to no catches in maybe your biggest game of the season last week.
Well, that was against New England. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about now. When the Patriots wanted to take him
Tre'Davious White, Amari Cooper had a very good game against Tre'Davious White, who's only given up one receiver over 100 yards on the season. He's one of the better corners in the league, Tre'Davious White, and Cooper had a pretty good game, and Cooper's been playing hurt all season long.
Oh, has he? Well, that changes my mind.
He gets an MRI every week.
Well, good for him. Maybe he's just soft then. Is that what you're saying? I mean, because that's the way I take Cooper. It's the way I took him in college. And he's not a guy that catches a bunch of touchdown passes. I don't think that he's a difference maker. I mean, he was a difference maker for the Cowboys because the wide receivers were terrible until he got there. But I just don't see a number one guy, just like I don't see Prescott, that could just drag guys across. He's not Julio Jones. He's not DeAndre Hopkins. He's a level below that.
Yeah, but really, who is Julio Jones? There's not many of them.
Well, A.J. Green, until he decided he didn't want to be a Bengal, which nobody can blame him for that. But, all right, we'll get off the Cowboys because they'll lose again shortly. Probably to the Chicago Bears. I'm just kidding. Or maybe I'm not. Mitch Trubisky, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 29 for 38. The thing that strikes me here is Detroit's defense was atrocious. They gave Trubisky the short passes the whole game, and they basically let Chicago dictate the terms of this game.
Yeah, well, the Lions are in complete shambles on both sides of the football. But the Chicago Bears, the fact that their defense allowed David Blow, whatever the hell his name is, to have a pretty good game passing on him. Kenny Golladay had a career game in receiving yards, I believe. Where the hell was Khalil Mack? Khalil Mack hasn't been there all season long, and this was a guy who was in the running for defensive MVP, even league MVP last year with the way that defense was playing. The Bears have been winning games, and it's crazy to say it's because of Mitchell Trubisky, who's played his best month of football in a very, very long time.
Yeah, but look who they've beaten. It's not like they've played anybody who could do anything to them.
I mean, somebody's got to win these games.
Yeah, but nobody cares who wins these games because it's the Bears and the Lions. And it was a good game. David Blah, I think, is a good quarterback. I thought he was a good quarterback coming out of Purdue. I didn't even realize he'd made an NFL roster until Thursday morning when they said he was starting. I think he's a better quarterback than Jeff Driscoll. I still think the Detroit Lions' problem is if Matt Stafford's there, they've got a couple more wins. Because I think they win this game if they have Matt Stafford there.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Because it's the Detroit Lions, and a lot of times they can just figure out
that
ways
that
to blow a
defense
game.
is just bad. Their defense is bad, and that's supposed to be the strength of Matt Patricia. I feel like I say this every week. I don't know how it's his strength.
I would say this, though.
Or maybe it was just a strength in New England.
It was his strength in New England because he had...
Because I'll tell you, Brian Flores, who has less, is doing a hell of a lot more.
Yes, completely agree. But I think also Matt Patricia doesn't have Bill Belichick holding his hand. And I think Brian Flores has actually done a great job with the Miami Dolphins this year.
Me too.
Where I think Matt Patricia, I would say fire him, but it seems like they have a hard time getting quality guys to come to Detroit anyways. So you might just be better off with what you got because you're probably not going to get any better because who wants to basically do career suicide? Next up, the New Orleans Saints beat the Atlanta Falcons 26-18. In a game that can just be known as the onside kick game. The thing that stood out to me, Drew Brees was only 18 for 30, 184 yards, 1 touchdown. But the thing that I think makes the Saints really dangerous going forward is Cam Jordan. Yeah, this defensive line was unreal in this game. I know Atlanta's offensive line is bad, but to watch Cam Jordan at the end of that game beat people when the backside of his defense is basically playing a prevent, To watch Cam Jordan just run roughshod over the Atlanta Falcons was pretty impressive.
Yeah, Cameron Jordan's one of the better pass rushers in the league, and I feel like he's one of the more underrated pass rushers. When he's on, that Saints defense is on, and I also think the Saints defense is completely different when Marshawn Lattimore is on the field. They go from, without Lattimore, and if that pass rush can't get going, they're a bottom 10 defense, but when Lattimore is on that field, they're a top 5 defense.
Yeah, but you can say that about a lot of teams if you take away the best DB. I mean,
yeah, but I think Lattimore is one of the top cover corners in the league.
I think Lattimore is the top cover corner in the league.
Yeah,
Lattimore or
that's fair to
Gilmore. I might take Gilmore over Lattimore, but it would be those two. Next up, the AFC South gets more interesting as the Tennessee Titans win again, 31-17 over the Indianapolis Colts in a game that was tied at the start of the fourth quarter. And quarterback play, I think, decided this. Ryan Tannehill. Who could have predicted this, Anthony? Wink, wink. 17 for 22, 182 yards, 2 touchdowns. Derrick Henry runs for 149 yards, 6 yards a carry. The Colts, Jacoby Brissett, 2 interceptions. They didn't run the ball very well. The Tennessee Titans are the real deal now. And Ryan Tannehill, we think comeback player of the year?
Yes, definitely comeback player of the year. If the Titans somehow made a run, I think he should be in the MVP conversation. But the way Lamar Jackson's playing right now, he won't be.
Really? Lamar Jackson would keep him at. Lamar Jackson doesn't have the numbers to be an MVP.
Lamar Jackson, we're talking about the same guy from the Ravens.
Yeah, the guy that threw for 100 and ran for 100 yesterday. I don't think that's MVP type numbers. I think
but
that team wins.
Who's the MVP? Because
Russell
Christian
Wilson.
McCaffrey, him not showing up, he's out of the conversation. Okay, Russell Wilson, but
I think it's a runaway for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson went to San Francisco and beat the Niners with about half the amount of talent. Russell Wilson is a Hall of Fame quarterback. We don't know what Lamar Jackson is yet. He's a guy that's played, a little over a half of a season, and he's played well. Don't put the cart before the horse. We've seen this on a lot of guys. Baker Mayfield looked like the real deal for 7 or 8 weeks last year. He doesn't anymore. So
yeah, look at who Lamar's beating, and look at how he's beating the same type of teams that Russell Wilson is, and Lamar Jackson. I would rather have Russell Wilson's receivers than Lamar Jackson's.
But I would rather have Lamar Jackson's coach in defense.
Yeah, that's fair.
And running game.
But you don't think Lamar Jackson, he plays a role into the way Baltimore runs the football?
Yes, I do. That's the thing, though. He plays a role on why that team is so good. Russell Wilson is the reason why that team is so good. I can tell you this. I think RG3 playing quarterback, they'd win the AFC North. With the exact same offense. Am I nuts?
Yeah. No, I don't think you're nuts.
Well, that's the point. Seattle, Russell Wilson makes them that good. And it's not a shot at Jackson. I would put Jackson probably at number 2 or number 3. But, a quarterback that's running for 100 and throwing for 100. And let's go ahead and get to that game because the Baltimore Ravens beat the San Francisco 49ers 20-17. Both teams are now 10-2. The Ravens, with last night's result with New England, are now the number 1 seed if the playoffs start today. I will also say this. I would rather have Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, and I think in good weather, I think the 49ers win this game.
Maybe in good weather in Santa Clara. I just think the home field advantage for Baltimore. They also have, I think Justin Tucker is slightly a better kicker than Robbie Gould. It was a slugfest. It was one of those types of games where somebody had to lose.
Yeah, and I think the weather and the home field advantage really helped the Ravens. I think if you play this in San Francisco, the Niners win. I think if you play this in a Super Bowl, who knows? But I would favor the Niners. Garoppolo, I think, had a better game than Jackson as a quarterback. 15 for 21, 165 and a touchdown. Your MVP candidate was 14 for 23 for 105 yards and a touchdown. He ran the ball 16 times for 101. Mark Ingram was held under 4 yards per carry. Raheem Mostert, 19 carries, 146 yards. I think just shows us that these are maybe the two best teams in the NFL right now, and if not, they're two of the 4 or 5 best.
Yeah, I think you have to put both of these teams on top right now. We'll see what Seattle and Minnesota, what the outcome is tonight. Um, but I don't know. I think the Ravens are pretty set in the AFC right now. They've already beaten handedly the Patriots and the Texans, and they own the tiebreakers there. And I think the NFC is more of a crapshoot because with this 49ers loss, let's say Minnesota wins, Seattle loses, there's a big cluster for who's going to be on the top when it comes to the playoff race.
Well, let's face it, with the Ravens right now, who's their challengers?
And even the Pack. I mean, and I'm not even measuring up the Packers.
Because the Packers
like,
don't deserve to
Packers?
be mentioned. The Packers won't even make the playoffs. I don't even know why the Packers are mentioned, and if they make the playoffs, they'll be out quick because the problem for the Packers is this. They play PlayStation football. You got like 4 teams in the NFC that play Smash Mouth football, and I don't think the Green Bay Packers can deal with that. If you put Green Bay in the AFC, then they're probably the second best team. But right now, they're at best the 5th or 6th best team in the NFC. I don't think they're as good as Minnesota. And I think we'll see that when they travel to Minnesota here shortly. I think this was possibly a preamble to a Super Bowl matchup. I think we could see a rematch in a Super Bowl. It would be a great game. But overall, with the Ravens, the big difference here is who are the Ravens' challengers? I think the Kansas City Chiefs are a team that people are sleeping on right now. I don't like Andy Reid, but they are a team that could outscore the Ravens. They did it earlier this year. But outside of that, the biggest threat is Bill Belichick's brain.
Yeah, because it's going to be the second time that Belichick's going to see the Ravens. And, I know it's, night and day, but last season, Baltimore, they handled the Chargers in the regular season and then went ahead and were completely shut down. Yes, it was a different Ravens team because that was more of the Joe Flacco built team around Lamar Jackson. But still, if you put Bill Belichick in front of Lamar Jackson and this offense a second time, I don't see the same outcome. It would be at least a closer game. You would think.
All right, let's get to the important stuff. And that is the Cincinnati Bengals get their first win, 22-6 over the New York Jets. Andy Dalton was 22 for 37, 243 yards, 1 touchdown. Very little running game. Andy Dalton basically, and the defense, Dalton led this team to a victory. And I still think this would probably be 3 or 4 in a row if they'd have left Dalton alone as a starting quarterback. Thank God they didn't because I want a higher draft pick. But the Jets were a team that came into this hot. Sam Darnold, 28 for 48, 239. Le'Veon Bell, once again, 10 carries, 32 yards. I just want to bring up the fact that the New York Jets beat the Dallas Cowboys, the Cincinnati Bengals bludgeoned the New York Jets, and now the Bengals have beaten the Cowboys.
I'm happy for the Bengals, and I'm happy for Andy Dalton because I don't think Dalton deserved his benching. Maybe they wanted to see if they had anything of Ryan Finley, and they saw enough. And you're right. I think if Andy Dalton was the quarterback in the past couple of games, they would have won possibly a few games in a row because the defense has been playing better really since that blowout against the last blowout against the Ravens. They lost all 1-score games against the Raiders and the Cincinnati Bengals. But Andy Dalton played really well. The Jets, they were coming off a 2 or 3 game winning streak. And it just seemed like the game for Cincinnati to win.
Yeah, and they got the win. That's enough talking about that. Next up, the Cleveland Browns are still the Cleveland Browns. They look set up to possibly make a playoff run with a weak schedule until the Ducks started quacking in Pittsburgh after being down 10-0, outscores the Browns 20-3 over the rest of the game. Baker Mayfield, 18 for 32, 196 yards, a touchdown and an interception. And this Browns team, Freddie Kitchens has got to be fired because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Devlin Hodges, 14 for 21, 212 yards, 1 touchdown. I believe I liked Hodges and you liked Rudolph.
Does it even matter?
Yes, it does. It always matters if I'm right. I'm going to bring it up. So it
But
doesn't really matter.
let's focus on what's important, and that's Freddie Kitchens. This was one of those games where you had players wearing T-shirts showing that it's going to be a revenge game, and there was that off the field banter, and then all of a sudden, here comes Freddie Kitchens wearing a T-shirt. This is a guy who's supposed to set an example for his team, and since he's become the head coach, he has made more noise than Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, because the team always follows the head coach. And that head coach is soft. He has no character. And he's not going to be a head coach very much longer. And that's a good thing. On the other end, Mike Tomlin now has the Pittsburgh Steelers at 7-5. If they go 7-9, he might deserve to be the coach of the year.
I think he'll end up with a winning record. I don't think they'll make the playoffs. But this has to be Mike Tomlin's, and he's won Super Bowls. He's been to Super Bowls.
Yeah, he won the Super Bowl with Cowers, guys, though.
This has to be his best head coaching performance. Considering the turnover and talent with Brown and Le'Veon Bell and Ben Roethlisberger, their starting running back, James Conner, missed a lot of time this year. And the smartest move, and I'll keep going back to it, was not only drafting that linebacker in the first round, but also that Minkah Fitzpatrick deal. Yes. And I think Tomlin is going back to defensive football and going back to running football, because even with James Conner out, Benny Snell is playing really, really well. And if it's not Benny Snell, it was Karith White last week. It was Jalen Samuels another week. Whoever you put back there in the Tomlin era, and this goes back to D'Angelo Williams when Le'Veon Bell was suspended, Fitzgerald Toussaint when Le'Veon Bell was hurt. They can effectively run. I think Tomlin is starting to kind of regress back to the old Steelers mentality.
Yeah, it's regressed, but in a positive way, I think.
Positive regression.
When you look at their schedule, if they beat the Cardinals next week, which they should do, even though it's in Arizona, that would put them at 8-5. They host the Buffalo Bills. And the Bills, that's the week before I think they play the Patriots again. And the Bills, outside of the Cowboys, they don't really blow anybody out. So that's a defensive struggle they could win. They play at the Jets. So really, if you get a Cardinals and a Jets win, you finish the season at Baltimore, which sounds tough. But Baltimore might already have everything clinched. You may not even see Lamar Jackson for more than a half, if at all. So Pittsburgh has a legit shot here. I can't believe I'm saying that because it's not a very good team. Well, put it like this. They're not a very talented team.
While I was naming all those injuries, Juju Smith-Schuster is also missing time. So they're doing it with the skeleton crew offense.
Yeah, because they're playing like a team. And a lot of these other teams with a lot of talent don't. Next up, a game that's near and dear to your heart, the Philadelphia Eagles lost to the Miami Dolphins 37-31 because nobody wants to win the NFC East. Carson Wentz, 28 for 46, 310, 3 touchdowns and an interception. Miles Sanders, 17 carries, 83 yards. The Dolphins, Ryan Fitzpatrick, almost exact same numbers as Carson Wentz, 27 for 39, 365, 3 touchdowns and an interception. But Fitzmagic gets it done again. And this is a huge loss for Philadelphia. I mean, not so much as Dallas lost also, but the Eagles have got issues right now, even though the rest of the schedule is pretty easy.
Yeah, and it really looked like their defense was turning the corner and getting healthy, and they took a big step back. Devontae Parker, who was a first-round pick, it seemed like he was never going anywhere, and all of a sudden Ryan Fitzpatrick comes along, resurrects his career. Kalen Ballage goes down. Patrick Laird, he looks like the best running back that they've had all season long, after Kenyon Drake, who really wasn't doing much when he was in Miami. I don't know how Miami's winning games, but they are, and I think it's a reflection on Brian Flores. And on the Eagles' end, they do have big problems because they got 2 wide receivers back. Miles Sanders finally showed up. I don't know if it's the fact that Jordan Howard is the key to this offense this season, but something is way off in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and if you look at the rest of the schedule, they still play the Giants twice. They played the Redskins once and the Cowboys once. I could easily see them going 4-0, but the way they're playing, I could damn near see them going 1-3 or 0-4 also, Anthony.
Yeah, and that's crazy to say considering the competition, but Washington's playing better, and you can make the case that the Giants might be able to steal one of those games.
It'd be a stretch to make that case probably, but you could make that case now. It's not as far-fetched as what it once was, and this could be a division that's won at 7 or 8 wins.
Yeah, and Seattle did it a long time ago with Mike Holmgren and made a Super Bowl run. So
no, they didn't.
Didn't they go 7-9?
They went 7-9. They upset the Saints, and then they got beat by the Bears the next week.
Okay, so I thought it was one of their Super
They won a
Bowl
playoff
runs,
game, but it wasn't a Super Bowl run. Next up.
Well, it was the precursor because I think that was the Marshawn
a couple years
Lynch.
Before.
That was the beast mode game where he went, he carried the Saints on his back for about 30 yards.
Yeah, and I think that was Pete Carroll. I think that was Pete Carroll's first playoff team, wasn't it? I'm not sure though. What year was that? It was like 2010 or 11.
Was it a Russell Wilson? Or was that Hasselbeck?
I think it was Hasselbeck. I think it was a year or two before Russell Wilson because once they got Russell Wilson, it kind of took off from there. Another coach that's about to be fired would be Ron Rivera, just because it's cooler to say. Kyle Allen wasn't terrible. Christian McCaffrey was held to 44 yards rushing, 58 yards receiving. This Panthers team has issues, and the Redskins might be the best team in the NFC East right now.
It's crazy how football works because the matchup said, and it was at home for the Panthers, that should have been a big, Christian McCaffrey game, who's been relatively unstoppable all season long, and he was completely shut down. And the only reason why the Panthers had points was because of 2 Kyle Allen touchdown passes. I think if you're going to move on from Cam Newton, you moved on from Ron Rivera too.
I think you move on from Ron Rivera either way. Dwayne Haskins, 13 for 25, 147 yards, so he didn't kill him. But Darius Geis, 10 carries, 129. Adrian Peterson, 13 carries, 99. You're usually going to win an NFL game when you rush for 240 yards.
Yeah, and that's been the Achilles heel for the Panthers defense. More so in the second half of the season, they've been completely gashed by the run. I know San Francisco was the first team to really expose them when Tevin Coleman scored 3 or 4 times, and I think it was Aaron Jones in Green Bay, and now Darius Geis looking like the second-round pick he was a few years ago, and Adrian Peterson looked like Adrian Peterson, but, he does that once in a while. He's just one of those type of players. The Panthers are bad.
Yeah.
They're just a bad team.
The Green Bay Packers ran their record to 9-3 with a 31-13 win over the New York Giants. Aaron Rodgers, 4 touchdowns. They didn't really run the ball that well, but they didn't need to because they were playing the Giants. Daniel Jones, 3 interceptions. Saquon Barkley, 19 carries for 83 yards. Really the first positive game he's had in a while, Anthony. But I think at what point do you have to wonder if Daniel Jones is the right guy in New York?
When you fire Pat Shurmur and bring in a real head coach.
So that'll be at the end of this year?
Probably. Because Daniel Jones, he's looked really good at times. He's looked really bad at times.
Yeah, but he's looked really bad a lot more than he's looked really good.
He also doesn't have, Evan Ingram has missed a lot of time. He's one of the better pass-catching tight ends. You can line him up everywhere. He's athletic. Anytime they get a receiver back, Sterling Shepard comes back, Golden Tate leaves. Golden Tate comes back, Sterling Shepard's out. So a lot of injuries all over the offense. I think with the right head coach, you have the pieces to be a big-time offense, and their rushing defense, their secondary is still terrible, but their run defense has gotten better. So I think they have some pieces. And if you bring in the right head coach, maybe a Mike McCarthy wants this job because of what he has to work with.
Why would anybody want him? But I know how it rolls. They like to get retreads instead of actual guys that might be able to coach. The
Well, the
Packers,
Bengals did that with Taylor.
no, they
They
didn't.
got
The
a new
Bengals
guy.
took the only
They got
guy
a
that
new
they could
guy.
get. I didn't say a 12-year-old. I said a guy that can coach. And the problem is in Cincinnati, you can't get a guy that'll coach that wants to come work with the Brown family. The Green Bay Packers will make the playoffs. I misspoke because they finished the season by hosting Washington. They host the Bears. They go to Minnesota, which I think they lose, and then they go to Detroit. So this team's going to be 11-5 or 12-4. But I don't really think I see them as a Super Bowl contender that could win two playoff games against the Saints and the 49ers.
I think it's all on Aaron Rodgers. What Aaron Rodgers is going to show up.
Yeah, but see, I think this. I think the Saints have Drew Brees, and the 49ers have a better roster. So even if he shows up and he plays out of his ass, Drew Brees could do the same thing. Russell Wilson could do the same thing. And then if that happens and you get a stalemate, the team with the better roster is probably going to win the game. That's where I think Green Bay's issue lies. Like I said, you put them in the AFC, they're a Super Bowl contender. I think in the NFC, I don't think they are. But, hey, how about this? Jameis Winston threw no interceptions yesterday, 21
He
for
did.
33, 268, no touchdowns, no interceptions, as the Buccaneers beat the Jaguars 28-11. Nick Foles, 7 for 14, 93 yards. He got benched at halftime for Gardner Minshew. The Jaguars have some serious issues here, and I think the Bucs have already probably won more games than most people thought they would this year.
Yeah, well, on Jameis Winston, he did have a turnover. He did lose a fumble, so he kept that streak going. But they were able to run the ball with Peyton Barber a little bit. He had 40-something yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, but he averaged
It
2.5
seemed
yards
like
per
a
carry.
lot of supporting pieces. Like O.J. Howard hasn't been there all season. He, was second on the team in receiving yards. Brashad Perriman, I think, led that team in receiving yards. Evans and Godwin had quiet games. It wasn't a typical Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive game. To me, it's a testament to their defense, and I feel like I'll be banging this drum all off season long. If they add the right pieces to their secondary, I think the Tampa Bay defense is going to be a top 5 defense next year.
Yeah, I mean, the pass rush is very good. They held Leonard Fournette to almost nothing yesterday. I think this team's headed in the right direction, and the thing that would make me feel even better about them...
You can't run on Tampa.
This is the thing that I really like, though. Jameis Winston of the past would have probably figured out a way to keep Jacksonville in this game. And the other question is, with Jacksonville, what do you do at quarterback? You've invested all this money in Nick Foles, and you just benched him at halftime for Gardner Minshew.
You hope you trade him. You hope somebody, needs a quarterback, or you go and have an open competition. Nick Foles out of Philadelphia is just a guy. This is his second trip outside of Philly. I remember. I think
he was stuck with Jeff Fisher before. We're not going to hold that against him.
Okay, but what's his excuse now?
He's stuck with Doug Marrone?
I think he's just a guy outside of Philly.
Well, I think that most guys are just a guy when they're with guys that are idiots that are the head coach. At least that's what I think. I could be wrong. Jared Goff didn't look like an idiot finally, but the Arizona Cardinals did, as they were beaten 34-7 by the Rams. Goff threw 2 touchdowns, 424 yards. The big thing here to me is the reason he looked good is because Todd Gurley looked more like Todd Gurley, rushing for almost 100 yards yesterday, Anthony.
Yeah, anytime you can establish a run, it opens things up for the rest of that offense. And the Rams still have a lot of firepower. But let's not forget they did play the Cardinals, and the Cardinals have been playing well. But it just wasn't their game. They can't stop the tight end. Gerald Everett missed the game, and Tyler Higbee had a career day. It was just one of those, the Rams were due. And I think their talent just overcame everything.
All right, next up, the Kansas City Chiefs won 40-9 over the Oakland Raiders. I think it exposed the Raiders as pretenders. And Patrick Mahomes was 15 for 29, 175 and a touchdown. How the hell did they score 40 points?
I,
Anthony?
I
I know it's from running the ball, but they had like three rushing touchdowns, and I don't think they averaged 4 yards per carry running the ball.
Well, Mahomes had that one nice rushing touchdown, and then it was McCoy and I believe Darrell Williams getting into it.
Darwin Williams, yeah. So the thing about it to me though is that the Chiefs are a team I think people are sleeping on a little bit, just because they're 8-4 right now, and I think they're still a really talented offensive team. The defense has played better this year than they did last year, so I think the Chiefs may be the biggest threat to the Ravens right now.
And the Chiefs, it's been a short rivalry between Lamar Jackson and Pat Mahomes. I think they played 2 games, and the Chiefs have won both of them. So it's going to be, the Chiefs might be the kryptonite for the Ravens. Who knows? But yeah, the Chiefs' defense is very much improved from their unit last year. I still think they need to run the ball a little bit better. But Pat Mahomes is getting healthy. Tyreek Hill's getting healthy. It seems like they're getting healthy at the right time. And the Raiders, they ran into the Raiders at the right time. They got blown out by the Jets. They get blown out by the Chiefs. I don't know if they've scored an offensive touchdown in 8 quarters.
Well, I think it's safe to say with the Raiders, though, they're well ahead of the curve. I don't think anybody would have thought they would be 6-6 right now, or 6-7, or whatever the hell their record is. But they've still won probably 2 or 3 more games than I thought they would this year. So I don't think all is lost in Oakland. They just need to get more weapons.
Yeah, and the weapons they have, Josh Jacobs, he's going to be a player. He had 104 yards on 17 attempts, 6.1 yards per carry. And I think that's going to hurt the Chiefs in the playoffs because they can't stop any running back. They are one of the worst, if not the worst, teams in stopping the run.
Yeah, and that's not a good thing.
Darren Waller is going to be a good piece, but when Tyrell Williams, he's a big play guy. He's not a number 1 wide receiver. They need wide receiver help around Derek Carr, and I think this team's going to be fine moving forward. I just think they need a few more pieces.
All right, the Denver Broncos got a first start from Drew Lock, their high draft pick from last season. 18 for 28, 134, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Made some plays. He made enough plays to win the game. But my question is this. How many different ways can the Los Angeles Chargers figure out how to lose a game in the last few minutes? And it doesn't matter who coaches them. It doesn't matter anything except in the end of the game, they're going to figure out a way to lose.
It's the Marty Schottenheimer effect. I don't know.
No, Don Coryell effect. I mean, if you look 1980 AFC Championship game, they lose 34-27 in the last couple minutes to the Reds. It's the way it's always been for the Chargers. Things just have a tendency to go wrong for them at the end of games, and I mean, do you move on from Phillip Rivers after this season?
Yeah, I mean, on Sunday morning, there was a report from the NFL Network's Ian Rappaport saying that they are prepared to bench Phillip Rivers if he had another poor performance. And I think Tyrod Taylor.
Okay, yeah. Tyrod Taylor's a good backup, but he's not your answer. And I don't think Rivers didn't actually play horribly in this game.
No, but I think his time is done.
Yeah. Another one whose time may be gone.
Can a pocket passer survive in today's NFL with a bad offensive line? Because I think that's what it comes. I mean, look at the bad games we've seen from Goff, Phillip Rivers, Tom Brady. If you're an immobile pocket passer and your offensive line is bad or injured, you're done. You're toast no matter how good your weapons are.
But that's how it's always been. If you're a pocket passer in your offense, but the problem is, if you go back to the late 70s, early 80s, probably half of the offensive lines in the NFL were really good. Now, there's just a handful of really good offensive lines.
Right, which is why the Lamar Jacksons and Deshaun Watson, which is why the mobile quarterbacks are having most success right now. When was the last time we've seen Tom Brady look this bad? Never?
Well, I'll tell you, if you look at his stats, he wasn't that bad.
No, but that was all of his stats.
To me, that wasn't even the offensive line.
That was garbage time.
I think
The
It wasn't
Texans were in
garbage
prevent.
time
They
because
were in prevent.
they damn near got the kickback. They'd have won the game if they would have. But the problem I see with the Patriots is this: they got Julian Edelman, then they got Jacoby Myers, Matt LaCrosse, Ben Watson, Philip Dorsett, Mohamed Sanu. The thing about Mohamed Sanu is he's not a guy that's going to go one on one and make a big play. I don't know that the problem is so much Tom Brady or the fact that he's got a bunch of wide receivers right now that can't get open. I mean, because the transition we've seen when you play against New England, it used to be you would try to get to Brady with your front four, and you would play all kind of zones, underneath, over top of the wide receivers, and just try to control everything and get to him with the pass rush. Now the problem is you're still just trying to get to him with 3 or 4 guys, your front guys. But you can now play man against his guys because his receivers are not real athletic. Mohamed Sanu is great, but he's not a burner. He's not athletic. I don't really know that there's a burner on this roster. And we saw last night they got called for a couple blatant picks because against man they're trying to run rub routes and all kind of stuff there where you're rubbing people off, which is what you do against man. But their receivers are not good enough to get open against man coverage.
And when it comes to the rookie and Keel Harry, I don't know if he knows where to line up. And that was something that there were negative reports about. He didn't know what to do in the preseason and the offseason. And I feel like that's hurting him now.
Well, see, the other thing is when you don't have athletic enough receivers to get open, a lot of the New England Patriots offense in the past was predicated on option routes, which is why a guy like Chad Johnson failed there miserably because with option routes, usually it's what you're doing against zone. So cover 2 zone, if I'm the slot receiver and I'm running an option route and I'm running a slant, against cover 2, I'm going to set that slant between the outside linebacker and the inside linebacker. Brady's going to throw me the ball, and I got to catch for 10 yards. The problem now is against a man, you have to run through that, and there's no option routes, and you have to be able to get open on your own, and he does not have the wide receivers right now that can do that, and I don't know where they're going to get one that can.
They're not exactly running the ball well, and I know that game script is, it's scripting Sony Michel out of the game because he did get off to a pretty good start yesterday, and then they fell behind. But is Bill Belichick holding an ace in his back pocket, possibly in the playoffs, in the form of the rookie Damian Harris? He's only active in 2 games. He's dealt with the soft tissue injuries, the hamstring, but this was a 3rd-round pick of the Patriots. He can do a little bit of everything. Maybe we see him unleashed in January.
I think it's very. I guarantee you this. He has something that he thinks can win this for him, or he's going to find it. But the question is, can it? And Damian Harris in college was a great running back, but he did have a tendency to get banged up a lot. Him and Bo Scarborough both. And Bo Scarborough looked really good for Detroit. But the question, especially with Scarborough, is can he stay healthy? Houston, on the other hand, Deshaun Watson would be my second choice as the MVP. I would go Lamar Jackson third. Deshaun Watson, 18 for 25, 234, 3 touchdowns. And that was with no running game. I mean, Duke Johnson carried the ball 9 times for 36 yards. Carlos Hyde, 10 for 17. And luckily, they got plenty of wide receivers in Houston, and Deshaun Watson looked really good again.
Yeah, Watson played unbelievable, and he's had success in the 2 previous games against New England. He has been able to put up numbers, but they really just did what they wanted to do. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins got credited for a touchdown pass to Watson.
Yeah.
Kenny Stills, anytime the Texans play, or anytime Kenny Stills plays the Patriots, if you want to put a prop bet, and I said this on my show on Saturday morning, if you want to put a prop bet that Kenny Stills scores, I mean, in 9 games, he's scored now 5 times. Or is it now 5 and 10? Either way, he was the only receiver on the Texans going into the game with a touchdown against New England.
All right, so we'll get off of that for now, and we'll preview a little Monday Night Football tonight, which there is a huge game in the NFC between the Minnesota Vikings and the Seattle Seahawks at Seattle. What do you think is the key to this game, and who is this game most important to?
I think both of these teams need this game.
Yeah, I think it's
for
of equal
different
importance.
reasons. You know, for the Seahawks, this gives them a chance to take over first place in the NFC West, and it would actually knock the 49ers down to the 5 seed. And for the Vikings, they would now be tied or keeping up with Green Bay?
Well, you know, the funny thing is that would mean that the Dallas Cowboys would probably have to host the San Francisco 49ers in the wild card playoff game.
Great.
That'd be a lot of fun for you, wouldn't it?
Great.
I know. I figured you'd be pumped up about that. It'd be a lot different than hosting a one-dimensional Seattle team last year. If you just look at numbers,
it would be fun because Mike Hoff, the co-host on my show, is a 49ers
yeah,
fan.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun until the clock runs out and the Cowboys just lost by 30 points and Mike's on your ass.
Or Ezekiel Elliott has a career game.
Will you stop? Just
It doesn't
stop.
take much for me to get back on the bandwagon.
God, please stop. I feel sorry for Mike. Mike, if you're out there, I feel sorry for you. The 49ers will beat you by 30 because Ezekiel Elliott can't have a big game because the Niners will probably score every time they have the ball, so you guys will stop running it in the middle of the first quarter.
Well, that's true.
All right, the Seahawks, if you look at the numbers, they don't look as formidable as the 9-2 would suggest. Their offensive line has been pretty bad all year. I think bottom 5, at least the bottom 10 offensive lines. I don't think the defense is that good statistically, but they've got Russell Wilson. They got Chris Carson, I think, has to have a huge game tonight against Minnesota for them to have a chance to win, Anthony.
Are they going to allow Chris Carson to have a big game is the question, because Chris Carson is now back in the doghouse for fumbling the ball. So are we going to see a little bit more Rashad Penny, or are they going to continue with Chris Carson? I think that's going to be the question going into this.
Yeah, and when I look at this going in, Minnesota's the better team on paper. But, of course, we don't play the games on paper. Who do you like in this game?
I actually am going to go with Kirk Cousins, who he got the signature win.
No,
He's
he
been playing
didn't. He beat
against
a team.
Dallas.
He beat a 500 team on the road. Big deal.
It was a team that I don't know if maybe he's beaten once when he was with the Redskins, but still it was a signature win in prime time, something that he struggles with. Then he has the game against Denver where he had to come from a deficit. I think Kirk Cousins has been playing outstanding football, and I think he has a chance to go on the road and make a really big statement, and I think he's going to get a job done.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins. I'm going to trust Kirk Cousins. Might come back to bite me, but I think he's deserving of the trust after what he's been doing since the first week of October.
Yeah, I think the Vikings win. I think they're the better team. I think Cousins will play good enough to win. But I think the key here is Dalvin Cook. I think Dalvin Cook's going to go off for 150 yards tonight. I think Minnesota will control the game. I think Minnesota wins this game 31-17. I
don't know if it's going to be by that big of a margin. I think it'll be a little bit closer. But, yeah, I think they're going to win 27-24, 27-21.
All right, so are the Cowboys going to stick with Brett Maher as their kicker?
I don't know. I don't need. If they think that's the worst of their problems,
they seem to, from what I'm reading in Dallas papers.
They should be instead of working out kickers, they should be working out new head coaches.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe Jerry will keep him even another year just to show everybody that he can do it.
I don't know if I can deal with another year of this.
Why? They win the first game of the year, you'll think they're going to go undefeated for the entire decade again.
Well, that took 4 nice wins for me to say that.
No,
they were blowing everybody out. Actually, they were blowing everybody out.
Actually, at the start of the year, you said it after the first game, and we can go back and we can pull.
Well, then whatever. They looked really good in week 1, and in week 2, and in week 3.
Who did they play in those 3 weeks? That's what I thought. Because I think right now, if they were to play the Miami Dolphins, they would lose to them.
It would not shock me at this point. I have
Um,
zero confidence in the Cowboys.
and I think this. I think the Bengals are going to beat the Browns at least once over the next month too.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise. I'm actually very surprised that Freddie Kitchens still has a job.
Yeah. So's Freddie Kitchens probably if you get right down to it. But all right, they should have kept Greg Williams, but Greg Williams got his ass smacked by Andy Dalton and the Cincinnati Bengals yesterday. You want to tell everybody where they can find you on the FF Face-Off?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at the Real NFL Guru. You can follow my show at the FF Face Off and find us on all of the top social media and podcast platforms.
All right, guys, and of course you can find us at The Grueling Truth. Also, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, whether it's iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, whatever it is, if there's a place to rate us and make a comment, we would appreciate it. But that's it. We will be back tomorrow at noon. Remember, you can hear us on any podcasting platform out there. Just type in The Grueling Truth. So, for Anthony Cervino, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.